Thank you very much, Cyril. If you could please. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Greetings, colleagues. Welcome to the Global Coalition Meeting Sub-Working Group 3.1. This is the February session, our final session for looking at the initiatives. I'm very excited to be here with all of you today for this session, and have a few administrative announcements to get us started. First, I wanted to, as discussed at the last meeting, discuss the private sector engagement plan as a third sector that we are looking at engaging. And this information is up on the website now. It was posted this morning, so you can all take a look at this. Basically, we are looking at engaging 6 different industries that relate to the synthetic drug phenomenon: the chemical industry, shipping, consignment, social media, e-commerce, and banking. There are 2 other industries which we feel are very important, particularly on the public health side: pharmaceutical industry and the artificial intelligence industry. We'll be looking at working with these industries sometime in the future as we start to get the other 6 industries underway. And how are we going to engage them? Well, we have a 6-part plan. We're first looking at coalition governments, once again, to establish national dialogues. We are inviting you all to connect with your private sector companies, ideally between February and March, although if you have to do that later, that's fine as well. We have already started doing that from the United States government side. Just on the 9th of February, we convened social media in an initiative we're calling an Alliance to Prevent Drug Harms. So we had Snap, we had Meta and Discord, and we're looking at public health measures of what they can do to help address the spread of synthetic drugs through social media. Then INCB is going to be hosting a meeting in Vienna, March 5 through 8, Tech Against Trafficking. We're excited about that engagement as well. And then we also have opportunities for private sector companies to share with us their experiences. And this will be an open feature that we'll be posting and sharing content on the website as those things materialize. So thank you very much for that. And then also we are looking for recommendations from private sector partners beginning in April, which also will add to the website. Beyond exchanging experiences, what concrete recommendations can they offer? And then we'll be looking at the presentations or interactions with select sub-working groups based on the discretion of the co-chairs from April to July. Finally, any achievements that are reached or notable from private sector companies between April and July will be also posting on the website. So these are a few engagement opportunities. But now I also want to share with you what the plan is moving forward in terms of recommendations and this very important meeting coming up on the 6th and 7th of March. As I mentioned earlier, this is the final meeting of the 2nd phase of the coalition. We have received several requests from governments to also provide presentations over on different issues or initiatives at the national level. And we will be speaking with co-chairs next week to determine how best to incorporate those requests within the schedule or plan coming up over the coming months. If you're also interested in sharing your own experiences, please reach out to us at the email address at the bottom of the screen. Now, co-chairs have at this point also received a draft list of recommendations for our coalition's work. These are being shared with all of you via email so that you will be able to share these within your governments over the next few weeks and come prepared to the March 6th and 7th meeting, where the recommendations will be discussed and finalized. Then they will be posted on the website as the formal recommendations of the coalition. So you're encouraged to share these recommendations within your governments before the March 6th and 7th meeting, and come prepared with any additional recommendations or ideas. Let me just make clear that governments are not required to implement all of the recommendations. We certainly hope you would, but there's no requirement in participating in the coalition that you will implement all of the recommendations. Also, the recommendations aren't meant to serve as an exhaustive list. These are the notional list of recommendations where we can all move forward, and we'll be working intensively. But if there are additional recommendations that you all have that you don't want to submit, that's also fine. Additionally, governments can implement, sorry, that's what I just said. They can implement additional recommendations outside of the list. If you're not able to submit recommendations in time for the March 6 to 7 meeting, you are also able to continue posting recommendations on the website. And how does all of this connect? Well, the recommendations will lead to initiatives, these concrete activities that, that we've been discussing. Those initiatives will then be looking at concrete achievements before September, so we can produce a one-year report in terms of achievements. But for the longer term, we're looking at concrete outcomes. And that is what we're really going to see in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of the coalition's work. And how does that look like in practice? Well, for an example, there might be the adoption of an innovative drug data collection technique as a recommendation. Let's adopt, better ways to collect drug data. And there are different tools like the Web App Assist, screening tool, or wastewater analysis. So an achievement might be that the Assist tool is now being used in 10 countries. And for wastewater analysis, 8 countries are receiving training and mentoring. Those are achievements. But then the outcomes would be that new drug use trends are detected and policy decisions are informed by the data as a result of the implementation of this recommendation and the initiatives under those. So you could see the importance of the recommendations on March 6th and 7th and how those will directly lead to specific initiatives that either we will identify at the global level or you can identify at the national level as well. I finally want to end in saying that the initiatives menu is now available on the website. You can find it there, as you see circled. And you'll notice that you have them organized by sub-working groups. And in those, when you click on the actual initiative, you'll see the description and the background. And you'll also see, in addition to the countries that are participating, you'll see the contact information that I've circled in red. So the exercise is, please start reviewing these initiatives, identify those that may be of interest, and directly email those points of contact so that you can reflect to them your country's interest in participating in these initiatives. So that is all for me for today. Thank you very much. And I will turn it over to our co-chairs, Carolina Bruce and Ingadora Sigfusdottir, to take over for the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for your clear overview and
Inga, we're getting a little bit of an echo from you, and you are now muted. Just testing your audio. Yeah,
I'm just trying to get down the noise in here around me. So
thank you.
So thanks, Brian. This was a really wonderful overview. As always, you give us and to where to start. So today we have only 2 presentations, which would mean that we would have more time than usual to discuss, to talk. I can see that there are 96 participants in the meeting, and so it will be great to have some space to talk. But before we open up for discussion, we're going to have 2 presentations. The first one by Marica Ferri. I hope I'm pronouncing your name in the right way. Marisa or Marica?
And I'm not sure that speaker is in the meeting because there's going to be a recorded presentation.
It's Marica. You're correct.
Marica. Okay, yeah. So Marica Ferri, the floor is yours. So please start and take over. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, thank you for inviting me today to give a brief presentation on the present and the future of prevention at the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction. As many of you know, our European agency based in Lisbon is being given an extended mandate by the European Commission, and we are going to implement it. Prevention remains one of the pillars of our activities, and in particular on the field of training of professionals. Prevention is particularly interesting because it's an area that gathers consensus about the need of improving interventions and providing evidence of effectiveness. So if many years ago there were still some doubts about which interventions were working better than others, now there is an increasing demand from many countries to have better training for professionals and to provide measurable results of interventions. Our agency is guided by the European Drug Strategy, where it is clearly stated that we need to disseminate through training the current evidence to enable decision makers to improve their decisions and interventions. So in particular in our action plan, that is also a guiding document, we do not work alone. We rather cooperate with other international organizations, for example, the UNODC and the WHO, while we implement quality standards for prevention interventions. We have to make sure we are always updated with the last available evidence. We have a kind of evidence surveillance system where every 3 months we scan the main scientific literature databases to identify relevant studies, to summarize them, and to rank them according to the level of evidence, which is also the levels of certainty for those interventions. We also have collection of examples of programs and practices. So for a number of manualized prevention interventions, we created a database where interventions are studied by a group of experts, filtered and suggested on the basis of the level of evidence in support. In addition, you can find summaries of the experience of the implementers. So in a way, if someone is interested in implementing one of those programs, they can also consult on the ones who have implemented them before and ask for suggestions, the way they overcome possible obstacles, barriers, etc. So from the real experience of the ones who implemented them, we can put our stakeholders in a position of making decisions, taking into consideration what are the levels of uncertainties. So how much responsibility one has to take when implementing an intervention for which, for example, the evidence is not so strong. We also have a training offer at our agency. There is a general training on all our activities available in 2 formats, in online version in winter, the winter school, and then in summer, 2 weeks here in Lisbon in collaboration with the Lisbon University. So the winter school is going to start next week, and we are very keen on welcoming the 25 students who already registered, while the summer school will be starting at the end of June and will go on until the end of the first week of July, this summer. In the summer and winter school, we provide a general overview of drugs-related issues and how in Europe we deal with them. We also have a specialized training for prevention, and this is based on the European Prevention Curriculum. The European Prevention Curriculum is the result of several European-funded projects collecting available training and adapting to our local context, regional context. This is also available online on a platform that we called PLATO, and where students can register, taking the training, synchronous training, so the teachers are really live and connected, and then they can remain in contact through this virtual community of practice. This is the trajectory that the students can decide to have. At the best, the higher level, they can become trainer of, so through a process of training of trainers. This is the last UPC training we offered in Berlin this year, and then the target population of this training are the so-called decision, opinion, and policy makers, to make sure that people taking decisions over prevention know the basic and are able to enabling others to implement them. So the UPC is quite successful, has been also nominated in several European action plans, and it has been mentioned in Spain, Italy, Greece, and Ireland as a prerequisite to providing prevention interventions. These are the figures of already trained trainers in the European countries. And then we are providing this training also through our international cooperation project, namely in this case for the Latin American countries through the COPOLAD project. And there will be a next phase that will address frontline professionals like teachers, social prevention workers, and law enforcement. And this will be is being developed through a European funded project called Politeia. So what we are trying to do is to maximize the results of the European funded project through providing sustainability and continuation of these projects through our platform. And then we are trying also to help the Latin American countries to create something similar to exchange, so an inventory of programs ready to be applied, including experiences from prevention experts who apply them. This image I stolen on the internet tends to give an impression of what are the three pillars at the base of the new mandate. So we have monitoring, preparedness, and capacity development. And then we will briefly see what are some proposals we are preparing for the new agency. These are just the preliminary proposals that we are already preparing. So one is to upscale the PLATO platform to make it ready for delivering training also for treatment, harm reduction, and several prevention training in national languages, also to support the initiatives at European level. Another close program is called UCOMP, and it will be like an inventory of curricula to be adapted or adopted at European level. The idea is really to open up our doors and to look what has been already developed outside, to make the best use of available resources and to avoid duplication of efforts. This will be probably the most ambitious of our programs. It's called You Decide, and is aimed at being a decision-making online toolkit that should make available all the current evidence and information we have in our agency and out of our agency, to integrate them and to support countries to take decision making that will always be inspired by their values, but based on facts available through our agency. And then, to support the implementation of evidence-based interventions, another projects proposed will take into consideration the existing quality standards to help professionals measure the quality of their services and systems and interventions. And this will also be open to collaboration with other organizations and professionals. So this was just a teaser about our future activity. The main message is that we are very excited about being opening to more collaboration and experiencing together on how to optimize our experience and to test new ways of helping the countries and implementing our ambitious and interesting mandate. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Marica. This was excellent, an excellent overview, and will give us both a food for thought and an opportunity for discussion that we'll have later on. Our agenda today was shortened, so on our list as a next presentation is training on prevention standards, Alleviates Stigma, by our well-known Wadih Maalouf. So I give the floor over to you, Wadih.
On behalf of UNODC, thank you again for inviting me to address this question on how can mainstreaming prevention in line with the science address stigma and discrimination. First of all, it's important to reflect on one of the important messages of the prevention standards, UNODC, WHO, international standards on drug use prevention, to be more specific. That shift of paradigm of initiation of drug use being not the result of a free and independent choice, especially at a young age, that a child or an adolescent or young adult can take, where messages of just saying no is not enough. And that's a key component of the shift of paradigm. Why? Well, it's mainly because of that vulnerability matrix that the prevention science really advise in terms of addressing when interventions are put in place, where that vulnerability is the result of personal characteristics, genetic susceptibilities, mental health characteristics, neurological development, stress reactivity, things that determine who the person is under their skin at a specific age of development, and how that person in his or her context really react to the ecological layer surrounding him or her, from family influences to school influences to peers, and of course these social institutions exist in a larger sort of ecological context. Raising a child is challenging, but raising a child in the context of conflict, displacement, social inequalities, violence at the community level is different. The same applies for school, and the same context of peers is also influenced by this larger ecological context. Needless to say, this larger ecological context have direct influence on the person and his or her vulnerability as well. So it's important to remember and reflect for policymakers that a child that's aggressive or have, and let's say, high reactivity to stress in the context of a family that is neglectful, let's say at best, or abusive at worst, in the context of poor social attachment in the school environment or in context of conflict and violence, requires much more than information about drugs, requires support for his or her characteristics and for the ecological layers around that person. So a just say no or information about drugs is merely scratching the surface and actually is not enough for that level of support. Another important, this is about the prevention standards say, another important characteristic of the messaging of the prevention standard is that evidence-based prevention is a developmental approach addressing intellectual, language, cognitive, emotional, and social competencies that the child needs at a different age of development. And this is where we see the level of intervention that the prevention standards talk about, as early as when the child is in the embryonic stage of the pregnant mother. And going on, for every age of development, you need different programs to address that development in a healthy and safe way. And the context of socialization of the brain with the environment around him or her is a key message moving forward. And that's also a radical shift in the paradigm of addressing the responses that is also key in addressing stigma. It is larger than just an innate or a kind of personal decision of yes and no, and a child being a good child or a bad child that needs to be contextualized in a preventive modality of application. Needless to say as well, you have a variety of interventions, universal. Any child at a certain age might benefit from these social interactions, social services or preventive services. These are the green lined interventions, but also there are children that are in the orange zone, meaning these are selective intervention for kids that are at higher risk than the normal population because of the context they are in or for their personal characteristics. Also indicated level of interventions, meaning that these are interventions for symptomatic children that need to be addressed early before it evolves into something more. All of these contexts are key for policymakers to understand and change their paradigm that is stigmatizing the person for the context they happen to be in. The third and very important message that kind of assembles everything that we said so far is that anyway, in the context of prevention, the point of focus for an evidence-based intervention is not the drug, is not the substance, but it's rather the individual and how we can support that individual moving forward. And this is exactly why, in the context of our World Drug Day, as of last year, that was our main slogan as UNODC moving forward. Put people first. Think about the people. Think about the person. And this is the key message in terms of stopping stigma and discrimination. And that's why starting with prevention and having a programmatic approach of prevention that is based on science can help addressing stigma before substance initiation kicks in. And post-initiation, and when the person has all of these vulnerability and the substance is in that person, of course, that substance that is hijacking the decision-making processes of the person also can be assimilated in an unstigmatized way and approved and understood by the policymakers in a more comprehensive way, rather than judging the person, judging for the decision, judging the person for what that person has been exposed to, either personally or through the ecological layer around them. And these are key features of addressing stigma and discrimination, and this is how science helps address stigma and discrimination. Thank you for that brief message to you, and hopefully it passed it on. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Wadih. As always, you are right on target. And I think this is actually quite a good starting point for our discussion. And this is, well, I have to mention the Icelandic prevention model because the key there was to change the focus of putting the responsibility on the child and the adolescent and putting the responsibility on the community as parents, as teachers, as coaches, as cops, as people who work with children and are responsible for providing them with environment so that they do not have to use drugs. So I sometimes say, you know, when you ask a 7-year-old, what do you want to become when you grow up? You never get the answer, I'm going to become an active substance user, you know. So I say we are responsible as as communities, as adults, for children to provide them with opportunities so that they do not have to use drugs. And so I very much dislike this idea of just teaching them. It may sound sensible, but it just doesn't work teaching them to say no to drugs. It's so much more complicated. So with that, I would like to give the floor over to our participants in our audience, and I am sure that we have a lot of questions for our presenters and for others in the group. So who would like to start?